Good afternoon or morning, wherever you are. Everyone, welcome. Thanks so much for joining us for our Ask Me Anything. I have to mention, your participation today is very important. We want to hear your questions. So if you already have things rolling, pop them in the chat. We'd love to hear it. I'm your moderator. As you can tell, we have multiple Rachels on the call. So I probably should have written it in my name, but people call me RK. They call Rachel RB. So feel free to reference us. If you have a question for a specific person, let us know. We're happy to answer those. I'll be guiding the conversation, keeping us on track. If we've got some long-winded folks, I'll wrap them up. But again, make sure to put questions in the chat. We'd love to have them. I'll do a few intros for our team so you can just get to know them, know their background. If you don't know them, if you do know them, give them a little shout out in the chat. Tell them hello. First up, we do have Rachel Betterbed, otherwise known as RB. She's our Vice President of Digital Marketing at Coalmarch. She brings over a decade of experience helping pest control, lawn care companies grow, mostly through data-driven digital marketing. If there's anything that Rachel cares about more, it's making decisions based on data, not feelings. She will, I'm sure, say that more than once today. She really specializes in simplifying those complex challenges that we all face and really leading a very high performing team at Coalmarch. And I would say arguably she's one of the sharpest minds that we have at Coalmarch. So you are in good company today. Next, we have Mark Calciano, our lead digital marketing consultant. Mark comes from a deep background in growth, customer experience, really that holistic marketing planning for businesses in pest and lawn. And he really helps build strategies also rooted in data and just really looking for that long-term growth. And he's really good at uncovering what actually is going to move the needle, which is always nice. And then rounding out our panel, we have Alex Booth, digital marketing consultant at Coalmarch. Alex really blends that sort of hands-on marketing experience with actual real-world business strategy and problems. And he just makes a really good translator between that strategy and execution. So he's known for helping owners understand both the why and the how in a way that's really clear and actionable. So we've got some good folks to answer your questions today. And like I said, it's meant to be a conversational. So if panelists, if you guys want to jump in, add more opinions throughout the hour or so, feel free. And I'll try to keep us all on pace and go from there. So again, if you have questions, head to the chat and we will go ahead and kick things off. So Mark, I'm going to take a look at the chat, but while we are looking at what people are saying, I want to start with you. What's the biggest change you've seen in sort of how customers find and choose a pest control or lawn care company in the last year? We've had a lot of changes in the industry. So what have you seen as the biggest change?
Yeah. First, I want to note, I see Ruby in the background behind RK there.
Oh, yeah.
You see her, that's Ruby.
There she is in all her glory.
But yeah, I mean, obviously the digital landscape has changed drastically over the last couple years, largely due to the introduction of all these different AI platforms, ChatGPT, Gemini, Google's AI overviews in general, which of course have changed how people are searching for pests and lawn, as well as pretty much anything. So it's becoming a lot less about keywords and a lot more about conversation. Potential customers, they're typing, they're talking to these search engines, and they're asking questions like they're talking to a real live person. The pest control side, what's the most effective way to get rid of ants in my kitchen? Or lawn care, why is my lawn turning yellow after it rains? Things like that. So this shift is really due to those AI platforms that they're interpreting intent instead of just relying on keywords. So that's been a big change, especially over the last year. But really how to be able to combat this is to adapt your content for how people are searching. Rewriting high traffic pages like blogs, service pages, using more natural question-based language that really mirrors how customers talk, which is how they're now searching. So that, structuring your content with clear subheads, short answers, local context to really help these AI models be able to interpret it accurately. But then also a big one that has always been important, but even more important now is adding fact sections to service pages covering things like safety, timing, location-based details, things like that. That a lot of times that's what AI is picking up and ranking, in like Google's AI overviews and things like that. But then, also zero-click searches, which I'm sure many of you have heard that term thrown around over the past couple of years, but that continues to be on the rise. So really meaning that more people are finding their answers directly on that search engine results page without actually going to a website. And a lot of people are calling directly through your Google business profile without going to your website. So having that, that profile showcase reviews and your expertise and things like that has become even more important because people are basing a lot of decisions directly off of there.
So something that you said, Mark, you said people are going to, calling or talking to the business from Google Business Profile or through these other AI chats. Does that make the website less valuable now? And feel free, I'm not even just to Mark, but to anyone else. What's your stance on that?
Well, like you mentioned before, we're all about the data, and what we're seeing is, website traffic and click-through rates and things like that are way down year over year, but actual organic leads are up year over year. So it really shows us that, consumers that have more of a higher intention to buy are still coming to your website, prior to reaching out or reaching out directly through there.
I think it's also important to note that as search behavior evolves and people find information in different ways, your website is still the hub of information about your business and your brand. And so even if people don't make it to your website is that hub. It's feeding information about your company and about your services and what you do and your methods. It's feeding it to those other sources. So it's like, in order to even come up on ChatGPT, if you go and you search what are the best pest control companies near me, it's taking information from your website. So your website still plays a role. It's also taking information from what people are saying about your brand online outside of your website. But that's kind of a ranking factor for SEO as well. It's kind of the authority element. So yeah, even if people aren't getting to your website, it still has a very important role in making sure that you have visibility. So I think that's something important to keep in mind, just again, as how people search evolves and will continue to evolve.
So that's a good point, RB, and sort of leads me into a question that I had. What does sort of that modern SEO? We know traditional SEO, it's all about the website. What does modern SEO actually mean in 2026 as all of this is changing? And how should the small businesses that we all work for and work with think about it differently than in the years past?
Yeah, it's a good question because SEO is a bit of a messier ecosystem than it's ever been, because again, the way that people are finding information, I mean, it goes beyond just AI tools and systems. I mean, people are finding information on YouTube, on TikTok, on, they're using on demand home service apps to find providers, right? Like in general, people are finding information in a lot of different ways. And so SEO is almost in a way somewhat of an outdated term just because it goes beyond just search engines in this day and age. It's just, how are people finding information and searching across all different kinds of platforms and tools, not just search engines like Google and Bing. And so I think the way to think about modern SEO today is that it requires more of you as, from a digital marketing strategy perspective, because it is a more vast and messy and intricate ecosystem that you have to take into consideration with your overall digital strategy. And so, like I said, even if, people are making decisions on Google or they're making decisions, on ChatGPT and they're not making it to your website is still that hub that's feeding the information to these sources. And so modern SEO doesn't mean that your website doesn't matter anymore. Of course, it still matters. It just means that, there needs to be a bigger focus and emphasis than ever on more authority building tactics. So things like, traditional SEO would be, you could throw up a page on your website about a specific keyword and rank. And now, modern SEO, it's more about having more expansive topical content that is not necessarily just optimized for a specific keyword, but it's more, it's covering a broader entity, and you have broader topic coverage on whatever it is that you're trying to rank for. So it's not just having a page that's targeting, exterminator in this market. It's about having a lot of really good, helpful, authoritative content that shows that you are that topical expert. But aside from that, I think when it comes to search, there's still so much opportunity for businesses to maximize what they're doing from a search perspective. Even if we do think of modern SEO as far as just ranking on Google, and, paid costs are getting more and more expensive. You all will see that in our upcoming benchmark report. And I think it's still a very underutilized channel as far as lead volume, of how do you drive more leads, from organic sources that have cost per leads at, a third of the cost of paid. And that translates to investing more into your website and doing SEO better. But, easier said than done sometimes.
No, totally. And you mentioned at the very beginning about, search behavior and YouTube, and we had a question come in from a viewer: what role does YouTube play in, this was specifically for lawn care, but, I'm sure it could apply to others, but what role does it play in the marketing mix, in your opinion?
Yeah, it's hard because, I'd put YouTube as its own search system, right? Separate than Google. It's a search engine in itself. And I'd put YouTube more in the brand awareness and education bucket because people aren't going to YouTube to find a local company to call right now, right? So at the end of the day, YouTube, like many other tools, is still a brand awareness tool to leverage to build awareness about who you are. And that kind of, I think the biggest opportunity there is education, educating people and building the authority, even just in the minds of consumers, of your brand. Now, how big of a role should it play in your marketing mix? Our favorite quote here at Coalmarch is, "It depends." And it's what we say to everything, because it really just does depend. It depends on, your resources. It depends on your marketing budget. I would say if you're a smaller company that doesn't, have a huge marketing budget and doesn't have a lot of resources, like, I probably wouldn't recommend prioritizing YouTube, because I don't think that it will make as much of an impact as other more traditional digital channels like organic and paid. But if you have the resources to dedicate some time there, I think, creating videos and creating educational content that can lend to the authority of your brand, I think that that's never a bad thing. But will creating videos on YouTube help your SEO directly? No. But YouTube has advertising options as well if you wanted to run video ads. I don't know that I would say that that's, again, the best use of the budget if you're a smaller company with not a big budget, because in general, video ads tend to be more expensive than, let's say, traditional display. So if you're trying to reach as many people as possible, get as many impressions as possible at a low cost, video is probably not the way to do it. Although, brand recall is higher with video. So all this to say that without knowing what your marketing budget is, what else you're doing digitally, it's hard to say what role it should play. But I think in general, being able to educate people and show your expertise, like, there's value there for sure.
Yeah. And one thing to add on that, I hear about it a lot, especially now with all this AI. Obviously, if you don't have a big budget, you might not have the funds to be able to go out and hire a professional, videographer company to come and do professional videos. Probably would recommend against using AI to create these videos. It can really, just, if that's a consumer's first impression of your brand, it might not be the impression that you want to give off. So even if it's you out in the field, like using your iPhone, something a little bit more just real and high quality, definitely would do that rather than using AI for it.
Yeah. And I feel like if I was to focus on video, I'd try and start with what kind of videos can you create to support your existing customers, and that you can support your website, so that you can embed on your website, whether it's your service pages, your local pages, like however you can get immediate eyes on it is going to be, with like an audience that you already have, I think is going to be a lot easier than not embedding it anywhere, not sending it to current customers, and just hoping it ranks in YouTube when someone searches how to get rid of weeds in my grass or something along those lines. So it's like, if you are going to do it, I would start with, creating and sending videos with the intent to be beneficial and valuable to your current customers and to embed on your website.
Yeah, I mean, especially now we're all in the day and age of doom scrolling and all that. Like, I'd much rather watch a 1-minute video than read a whole page or something. So definitely has its benefits.
No, totally. So switching gears a little bit, I want to go into, we're midway through December. There's already been a fair amount of snow on the ground in the East Coast and Midwest. Alex, I want to hear from you. How should the marketing strategy shift in the off season? I know that's a common question and can be sort of polarizing in some ways. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think we always talk about like the off season as the slow season, right? But it's just a misconception that really, I think right now is when a lot of companies, again, whether they're in Florida or California, they might not have as much of a slow season, but this is when they should start planning, right? I feel like we preach this and talk about it all the time. And, for us, when it comes to our clients who do take advantage of this, I think they get ahead, right? They're being much more proactive instead of reactive when it comes to their strategy. But the first thing I would say is, right, look at the data and let's see what happened this past year. Take a look under the hood, see what's going on, see what changes we need to make, what do we need to fix, how can we prep for next year. But especially when it comes to the marketing side, it's like what campaigns are working, right? What channels maybe drove the most leads, or maybe you had some channels that were driving a lot of leads but not a lot of sales, right? So digging into it and figuring out why, because I know when we used to be more into like looking at phone systems and things like that, it was, how are your sales reps performing? Are there bottlenecks that are keeping them from, actually making the sale? Is it long hold times? I mean, the list goes on and on and on, but even just from a marketing perspective, it's like, if you're paying for leads and you're paying to have your marketing work for you, let's make sure there's nothing keeping your reps from making that sale. I mean, continuing to look at like last season, it's like, what worked this year? What cities or towns are you being effective in? Where are good customers? Because they're hard enough to find as it is. So it's like, where are you getting your ideal customers from? Okay, how can we double down on that and go get that next season? Same thing with services. Like, what services are working? What services are the most profitable? What services have the most retention? Just figuring out ways that you can, again, be more efficient with the business and have a good plan in place to go get it. And I think now, right, we're biased talking about the marketing side, but like, this is a good time to start investing in some of the foundational things. Even going back to like the AI conversation, right? Like, if you chat GPT how to help show up with like generative search and AI search, a lot of it is doing like really good foundational SEO work. So looking at how to improve conversion, right? For having a decent amount of sessions and traffic to the website, how can we turn those people into leads? Cleaning up your Google business profiles, maybe even looking at like expanding into new markets and seeing where your customers are, where they're good customers. And I think one thing that maybe we don't talk enough about is, even though it's the off season, especially in lawn care, staying visible. Like, you don't need to not spend any money or do no paid advertising or no brand awareness. Like, you can still run a budget. You can still have your name out there. Because I think one of the hard things to do is to build trust with customers, right? That's hard enough as it is. And so if you're still visible, you're still showing up, I think it's easier when it comes sales time for those people to actually convert and choose you as a business versus, just going with the first person that shows up. And on top of that, shoot, you could be emailing current customers, texting current customers, like, communicating not only with potential customers, but also your current customers, because, retention's a big part of that too. So.
Yeah. And then we just talked about video and all that, being more of a brand awareness type of channel. coming up soon or even now, like running some of those videos or like Facebook, Instagram, paid advertising, like running those in the off season a little bit ahead of the busy season picking up can help too. Just getting your name out there. So when people do search for, lawn and pest, when March, April hits, they're recalling your brand. Maybe they don't even know why, but it's because they saw your video on Facebook 12 times over the last 3 months or something.
No, totally. I think one of the things that when you're investing in marketing and having a marketing strategy, hopefully you're working with a partner, whether it's internally or externally, being proactive in collecting that data, like you mentioned, Alex, asking the right questions is just, that's the start of it. Asking the right questions from the right groups, getting, delegating those numbers. You as the business owner just need to evaluate the numbers, but someone else can pull those for you. So whether it's your sales team, your marketing vendor that you've hired, have them evaluate 2025 and put it right in your hands so that you can take a look and actually come up with a plan moving forward, or ask them to come up with a plan if that's the way that your organization works. So half the battle is just getting that data and knowing what proactive questions to ask.
Yeah, I was going to say too, like whatever software CRM you're using, like find a way to leverage that as much as possible too. Like, they're all kind of complex in their own ways, but the more data that you can pull, again, like we're biased in the sense of like, yeah, we're looking at the marketing data. We want to see what analytics has to say, but we also need the full picture, right? Of like, where are your sales coming from? Where are you dense? Where are you trying to go? Like this is when, again, they have time to sit down and like make that plan of, they have all the data in the world. They just got to find the way to get it. And then, have it to where it's digestible in the sense to like, yeah, we can use this and we can make a plan off of it.
Yeah.
And I think that's where AI can really come in handy. I think there's so much data that you have without even trying in your CRM. And it's just a matter of taking that data and turning it into insights and finding trends and repeatable patterns and being able to leverage those insights into your marketing strategy. And, that's where AI is so, so helpful is you can dump a bunch of data in ChatGPT or Gemini and get, some fast insights and trends. And like, that's really just, I know we've talked a lot about data, but in the off season, especially towards the end of the year, really diving into the data, I think it can tell such a story. And I know just like, as, someone managing a business, like we very much like to look at our data as lead indicators and lag indicators. Lead indicators are, data that's going to help tell you what's going to happen in the future, whereas lag indicators is data that's going to tell you what happened in the past. And so I think part of prepping for the upcoming year is also, do you have the right lead and lag indicators in place to tell you not just what happened the last quarter, the last month, the last year, but also what's going to happen. And I think that, when you can unlock those lead indicators that help you forecast, that help you plan and predict, like that's really where you can get really like nimble in your business, because those indicators can help you make fast changes and pivot and adapt in the moment. And all of that data is just also so valuable to share with, whoever is doing your marketing, whether it's internal or, outside vendor. Like Alex said, we don't often have the full picture as the marketing vendor as to what's going on in your business. And like that data can be so, so helpful. I know we just had a client call yesterday where our client was telling us, this specific area our retention rate is nearly double, over the last 3 years than these other areas. And like, that's such helpful information for us to know from a targeting budget allocation standpoint. So you can get really granular with trying to find trends, again, whether it's with retention, whether it's with churn, whether it's with, demographics, all of that stuff is really, really helpful for us to leverage in like your overall marketing strategy.
No, such a good point. So let's switch to a little bit more tactical. I know when we are sort of planning for the upcoming year, a lot of the questions that we typically get are centered around how much do I need to spend on paid ads? And I want to get, the three of y'all are the best ones to talk about this with, because you are so used to getting those questions. And I'm sure we'll just get the "it depends" answer from Rachel, but it really does. And I think there are some components, but what are the key staples? And maybe Mark, maybe you want to give us some insight on what you're thinking.
I knew you'd call me out because I love our calculator. Let me share my screen real quick.
Calculator. Oh, we got to see this calculator you speak of. Are you able to share? Or?
Yeah, it should be. Can you guys see that all right? Oh, there we go.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, obviously it really depends. So every business, even in the same market, it's going to vary on what you could or should be spending. So obviously a lot of other factors that go involved, but we put this calculator together. I mentioned that because I nerd out with it all the time. I love plugging and playing with the numbers.
Mark, can you zoom in just so people can see it a little bit clearer? There you go.
Yeah, perfect.
Better. And do want to mention, this is something that we can share with y'all as well. So you can kind of plug and play with your own numbers, but to kind of just walk through what what's laid out here and why it's helpful. So already have some like numbers in here, just kind of more straightforward, but like, so say your current revenue is 2 million, you have a 15% growth goal, that'd be 300,000 year over year. If your current recurring revenue is 90%, 10% one-time revenue. So whatever that breakdown looks like for you. And then also, projected recurring revenue attrition. So I put 15%. So if you have an 85%, customer retention rate, that's how that would factor in. Cause there's customers that you lose. If you lose 15% of your recurring customers every year, on top of having 10% of your total revenue being one-time revenue, you're going to have to make that up in the following year. So it helps break that down. That's what you see, that total here is the $470,000 in estimated lost revenue from that one time and the recurring customers that cancel in that year. And then a couple other things, if you have potential for upsell revenue, as well as revenue from referrals and any other kind of miscellaneous channels, whatever that might be. So just kind of an idea of what other opportunities you have out there to go collect revenue. So then it'll break it down. What's the total amount of revenue that you need based off your current revenue, what you want to see growth wise, and tying in that, attrition rate and what you need to make up for. So then going down here, obviously this is going to change by market, by industry, specific services that you offer. I put in 750 as far as the annual customer value. So it'll take that into consideration and break down, how many new customers that you need to acquire, based off of all the metrics that we just input and your growth goals. And then what's your projected closing rate? Do you close, 50% of the calls and contact forms, the leads that you have coming in? And it'll take how many total leads that you need based off of what your average sales closing rate is. So then the next factor, which can be hard to project sometimes. So definitely if you have year over year data of, how many leads you're generating through other channels outside of paid advertising, that's where this would be, how many leads that you can expect coming in organically and through other channels outside of paid. And then put 65 miscellaneous leads just to kind of match that revenue up here. So it'll give you, here's how many leads that you need to get from paid advertising based on your growth goals and what your average sales closing rate is. And then another big factor, obviously, that's going to change by market and industry is what's that projected average cost per lead for paid advertising. Just to kind of keep numbers easy, I look at a roughly $100 cost per lead for paid ads. So if you're a $2 million business, these are all your performance metrics. Looking to grow 15%, project around a $90,000 digital advertising budget for the next year.
So looking at this calculator, I mean, sometimes it can get overwhelming because in order to get to that number, you have to be very in tune with the rest of the numbers in your business. Where, I guess, from your perspective, Mark, where do people sort of fall short in being able to, what numbers don't they know? Or where do you think people need to focus on dialing in a little bit deeper than maybe they're currently doing?
Well, step one is actually taking the time this time of year to assess how the year went and put together, what your growth goals are for the following year.
Yeah.
So that's a big factor. What kind of budget are you even capable of having? But yeah, I mean, being able to track things, Alex mentioned using the CRM to be able to, extract customer data. So being able to track, what is your actual retention rate? What is your actual closing rate? A lot of folks that we talk to, I close, 90% of the leads I get. Like, do you close 90% of the calls that you get or all leads? Because a lot of times it's a little bit lower than that. So you also want to really be honest with what you're inputting here. It's only doing yourself a detriment if you're kind of inflating some of those numbers. But yeah, retention rate, and all of that is definitely a couple of the main metrics that we look at as well.
Yeah, I was going to say one of the reasons why I love this calculator is because it forces you to be honest with yourself.
Yeah.
Right. And again, like we have these conversations all the time of like, how can we get more leads? How can we grow? We're not growing. It's like, all right, well, let's look at what's happening. Right? Are you retaining customers? Are you upselling customers? What's your close rate? Right. Let's figure out the basics of, operations. And once we have the full picture, which again, this helps so much. It's like, all right, well, the close rate's really low. So either that's a lead generation problem, we're bringing in bad leads, or it's a sales problem, right? Or retention's really low. So either again, that's a lead problem, or it's an operations problem, it's a service problem. So it's like there's some things that we can fix, and there's some things that maybe we can just help to highlight. But this calculator, I feel like, does a great job of showing you like what's actually going on. It's really helpful for us, like personally. So
it's just good if you're not, maybe you don't even really think about some of these metrics. So it does force you to not only be honest, but sit down and think through each of these specific metrics, and figure out a way to track them if you're not already doing it.
Yeah, makes sense. So of course, paid advertising is a large portion of a typical marketing budget, within our industry. And I sort of want to get your insight, Rachel. How should someone decide where to put their next marketing investment? Is that in paid ads? Is it in something else? What are you thinking for this next year about where to make the next marketing investment?
Yeah, I think, again, as someone who's running a business, like RK and I are running Coalmarch, so we can relate so much to our customers with some of these things because we have to figure it out for our own business, so I can speak from a perspective of, in our business. And I think in any business, it's, you have to balance short-term wins with long-term growth. And that is so hard, is finding the will and the discipline to invest in things that are going to help you long-term. And the way that I like to think of it is more just like, is present you looking out for future you at all times? Like, it's very easy, especially I can be a procrastinator at times in my personal life, right? And I'm like, why is present me really not looking out for future me? And then future me is like, dang, present her just did us dirty. So all that to say, have present you look out for future you. And when I say that, it's like balancing the short term with the long term. And when I say that, I think short-term investments that a lot of lawn and pest companies are making, definitely with paid media. I think where they should be making it as far as short-term, so going into 2026, I think PPC, depending on your business, depending on your resources, depending on the markets that you're in, right, you may have a higher and greater reliance on PPC and leads from ads, but there's still more that you can be doing with PPC as far as just like getting creative. I think it's really easy to kind of run into a set it and forget it mindset. And I don't even mean that just from, your team that's optimizing your campaigns, but more just like getting creative with testing new offers on specific platforms, running more like time sensitive campaigns with special messaging, again, special offers, try an offer for 30 days and see if it lands with people, try different things and see what lands from a messaging perspective. I think as far as short-term too, really focusing on upsells and cross-sells. As I talk to our customers throughout the years, I really still feel like this is just the lowest hanging fruit that is constantly underutilized within a business. One of the fastest ways to grow revenue, and also one of the most cost-effective ways is to get more revenue out of your existing customers. So building systems around upsells and cross-sells that can automate this for you, whether it's automated emails, text messages, but then also having, your sales team, whether you have an inbound salesperson that's focusing on really upselling your current customers, or a specific role for that. I think just focusing in general on upsells and getting your customers on higher packages, that is such low-hanging fruit. And then like, as far as just like short-term investment, maybe not even monetary so much as just like in your brain, like really taking the time to foster and nurture that real-time collaboration with your marketing team, whether it's internal, external. We've talked a lot about data and insights and being highly intimate with your business and knowing what's going on and being able to bring that data and those insights to your marketing team. That is only going to help inform your marketing strategy. And you'd be surprised. Sometimes it's hard. We want to collaborate sometimes more with our clients than they want to collaborate with us. And, on one hand, when you're running a business, you're like, I pay you to take things off my to-do list, not put more things on my to-do list, which is totally fair. But at the same time, when we can collaborate and we can both bring insights to the table, it's only going to benefit the business and your marketing. So those are the short-term things. Long-term, on the other hand, I think things that are overall going to give your business stability. And also, again, I think, long-term, if you can reduce the dependence that you have on PPC, if you do have a very high dependence, meaning like you have to invest a ton of money to generate leads, if there's still plenty of opportunity from an SEO and local visibility standpoint, I think investing more into your SEO is only going to help you in the future, especially because, like we said earlier, your website is still going to be that hub of information that is feeding information to other sources. So even if 5 years from now, nobody's, using Google and everyone's using ChatGPT, which I don't think is going to happen, your website is still going to be feeding a lot of that information. So investing into your website is future-proofing, your strategy around search in general. I think brand awareness is something that we've talked about that is very easy for companies to continuously put off as far as like investment. Just, if it's not going to generate immediate leads, it's not really valuable, right? But over time, as this market gets really, really saturated and there's a lot of companies doing exactly what you do. How do you differentiate? How do you build that top of mind level of awareness with people? I think operational efficiency is one too that, recently being on client calls and talking to our clients, people think of marketing and operations as such separate entities of their business. But what they don't realize is, if you can gain more operational efficiency through the use of AI technology tools, that just is more money that you can put into marketing your business. If you can, if your profit margins with your cost of goods sold, all of the things that go into producing your services, if that can be higher and that gives you more capital to invest in your marketing, that's what's going to help your business grow over time. And, that's something that's very hard. It's hard to balance where you're putting your money in your business from a service delivery standpoint, but also from a marketing and branding perspective. So I think, if you're not using AI in your business whatsoever, you're already behind. And if you're not really using technology to automate things and you're paying someone to do a lot of tedious work, you're already behind. And that's a really good long-term investment in your business is technology, and really gaining that operational efficiency. And then, I'm sorry, I know I've been talking a while. And then lastly, I think, strategic partnerships, that's something, how can you leverage that within your business? There's, depending on the market that you're in, I know, one example is there's a lot of new homes being built, building partnerships with companies that are strategic and that could benefit your business. That's something that, talking to a lot of clients, they don't really have a strategy around, whether it's other home service businesses in completely different verticals, or it's, again, things like home builders and things like that. So I think start building those relationships and invest the time in that can definitely help you 3 to 5 year you, not just present you.
So those are some big things that it almost feels like are missed opportunities for a good majority of the industry. Current customer marketing, huge, underutilized. Strategic partnerships within your community, underutilized. Alex, is there anything else that you would add to that as far as a missed opportunity that you see in pest and lawn, or did RB just cover it all?
Yeah, I mean, those were all the things. And it's actually funny because I was talking with a client this morning about a lot of these things, like talking about like, all right, what's your average customer value? Right? What are your add-ons? Okay, why don't we just bundle this together and now we can increase your average customer value by $80 right away, right? So it's like, it's things like that when you're thinking about, okay, well, we'd like to have more revenue. Our overhead's not going away. How can we be more profitable? All right. It's like, okay, well, adding more services is a way to be more profitable, right? We don't have to go get new customers. We don't have to spend $100 a lead, $200 a sale, whatever it is. Like, let's just spend the time to invest into our base, right? You've already won the customer. Like, they're paying you money. So you can make money off of going to make more money per customer. I just think that's a huge thing. It's like that. And then you tie that into retention, like, make efforts. Like, there are tools, I guess this would be a shameless plug for applause, but like, you can get ahead of retention when you're reaching out to customers, when you're asking for feedback, when you're seeing if they're happy or not, right? Yeah. And it doesn't cost money. It costs time, right? To reach out to customers and to check in and to maybe fix the problem. But you don't have to go through the whole process of, the acquisition process again. You don't have to go find another customer. Mm-hmm. So it's like, those are things that, like, when I think about, I don't know, just looking at next year, I know retention is always a conversation, but there's not as much investment on retention as there is in lead generation. And it's just that, and then the cross sells, I think, are just like things that, if you're not thinking about that for next year, you should start now, because it's an easy way to be profitable and to increase your revenue without having to spend a lot of money to do it.
Yeah.
Oh,
sorry. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, even referring to the calculator that I shared, I mean, in that example with a 15% attrition rate, that's $270,000 that company needs to make up to go get new customers and make up that revenue for a $2 million business. That's, a lot that you need to invest to go make up that revenue.
And when you have such a simple solution like bundling your services, I mean, that is very common in the industry now. It wasn't, 10 years ago, but it is very common. But how often are we also reevaluating those bundles? Are they actually pushing more sales in one direction, or do we have the right mix of services? Have things changed as we've added on more services, or our existing customer base has changed? You don't hear a ton about people evaluating those bundles, and those are things that you can do now so that you are prepped and have your team ready and out in the field to upsell those to existing customers. So
I mean, especially now, even like just new service lines, like Alex mentioned. I mean, a lot of times on the pest control side, we're seeing a lot more folks offering like crawl space services, encapsulation services, things like that. If you're already in someone's crawl space or attic, it's just you can identify a problem. And, I'm not saying it's an easy upsell, but it goes hand in hand with what you already offer, on the pest control side of things sometimes.
Yeah. And looking at that very intently and making sure that you're making that decision, because I'm sure there's plenty of people who say, adding more service lines, creates more problems than not. And some businesses it works for great and others not. So if you have a good operational system, maybe adding more service lines makes sense for you. But if operations are not necessarily your strong suit, then maybe that's not the route to grow. So it depends, right? The theme of the day.
Yeah, and it's a great point. Don't spread yourself too thin by offering too many different services if you're a real small team. Definitely specialize enough in certain verticals.
Yes. So a couple more questions before we wrap up this morning, depending on where you're watching from. Going in a little bit deeper into Google and, the SERP. Mark, I want to hear from you about what you think, what's the fastest way to improve your map pack visibility in a competitive area? This is one that is something that is so valuable, but also very hard to do. And you have to be dedicated to doing it. So what would you say is the fastest way to improve that map pack visibility?
Well, one, I would go in with more realistic expectations. What do you mean by fast? There's no guarantee that you're going to set up a profile and get it ranking fast, but there's, obviously some key things that you can do to help improve visibility quicker. I mean, step one, if you don't have a profile, setting up that Google business profile and making sure it's within Google's guidelines. That's been a big thing in the past 2.5, 3 years now, that they've really gotten more strict. Some of you may have experienced that with going through a verification process or getting a profile banned. But they really have two different types. So one is like a physical location. So if you have an office, definitely making sure it's set up that way where you actually can add the address and make the address visible on the profile. That's really going to help Google just understand, specifically where you're located and where you service. If you're, smaller or you don't have an office yet, maybe it's not feasible to go rent one. Rent is astronomical in a lot of markets, so definitely understandable. So if you're operating out of your house or something like that, still setting up a profile, but Google pretty much dictates that it needs to be what they call a service area business profile, where you can show the general service area, that you cover, but can't, add your address to that profile. So it's better than nothing, but doesn't have quite the ranking power as if you had a physical location with the address on that profile. So step one, setting it up the right way, making sure that it's completely filled out with up-to-date, accurate information, company name, address, phone number, products, business hours, things like that. Surprisingly enough, I think one thing a lot of people miss is that they don't check off all their service categories, especially a lot of their secondary services. So if you're pest control,
that's so easy.
I know, but if you're pest control and you offer, termite, mosquito, rodent, making sure that all those things are marked off in the back end. So Google actually knows that you offer those services. And then of course, reviews. They're, have been important for a long time now for potential customers, just seeing, what feedback is from past or existing customers, but they become much more of a ranking factor on Google now with that Google business profile. And any of you that are familiar or use Google local service ads. So I know, Alex brought up Applause. They're a great platform to help generate reviews to that, to those profiles. So consistently getting reviews, obviously you want, the more good reviews that you can get, the better, but then also responding to those reviews, interacting with that profile, interacting with customers on there. Another ranking factor in Google's eyes to help, increase visibility in that map pack.
So I would consider all of those the non-negotiables, the must-haves, the things you have to do in order to compete in any way, to even just be on the map, no pun intended. So how do you take that from just doing, honestly, it might be the bare minimum. Let's be honest. I think it's the bare minimum. So how do you take it to really compete in the competitive area? I know reviews are a big one, but are there any strategies that you're seeing that may take it up a notch?
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, proximity is just so important. So Mark touched on that in his answer, and that's really the number one answer is that, if you are not within close proximity to where someone is searching, your visibility in the map section is not going to be viable, right? So this is something that you see a lot with like franchise companies. They have a lot more locations, physical locations. And, in order to get these verified via Google Business Profile, they have to be, legitimate offices and locations that you pay rent on, that you can get mail to, that has business signage, right? There's, in the last 10, 15 years, there's a lot of shortcuts companies have tried to take by buying virtual offices, fake offices, right? And you might be able to get it approved temporarily, and then it gets suspended and flagged as spam eventually. But yeah, locations are really, and proximity is the number one way. And so the way that we like to kind of advise and consult our clients is to think of it like a marketing expense, even if you're not going to operate out of there and house products and keep your trucks there and meet your team there, right? Like looking at it as a marketing expense. And of course, the reality of that is going to look different market to market, right? Because rent in some areas may be astronomical, that if you're looking at a $5,000 a month rent on a lease, commercial lease, that may not be feasible. But I think it's definitely an option to explore. And the more locations that you can have in literal zip codes that have the most opportunity for your target customer and have the most demand, like those are going to be the most impactful in generating as many leads as possible from, this part of the search engine results page, which a lot of consumers navigate to, a lot of consumers click on. It's prime real estate for sure.
Yeah. So if you look at it as that marketing budget, you, in theory, can factor that in to come up with your cost per lead and factoring that rent, those operational expenses into it, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The problem with that sometimes with commercial leases is you have to commit to sometimes a 3 to 5 year lease. And, again, depending on the cost, that can be pretty risky. And so I think these are the kinds of things that we absolutely try to consult our customers on. And we try to use data to back up recommendations. If, they'll come to us, oh, I'm thinking of getting an office in this zip code. Like, do we think there's enough demand there? Do we think there's enough opportunity? Because I'd have to commit. These are the kinds of things that we're regularly talking to our customers about, advising them.
But then
Go ahead, Mark. I've interrupted you 2 times already. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, on that same note, though, obviously looking at there's enough search volume and demand for your services in those areas, but also what does the competitive landscape look like? If you're looking at one town to get an office in, are there 15 other lawn care companies that have an office with the address in that town when maybe the next town over, there's only a few, but demand might be pretty comparable between the two? Well, go with the one where there's less direct competitors close by will help the ability for that profile to rank.
No, it's such a good point, and it's so crucial to just utilize your marketing resources, whether internally or externally, to make those decisions. Even if you are looking for a space to do operations out of, you're looking to move, consider the marketing implications of that as well. I mean, there's so many. For years you had a cheap warehouse space in the middle of nowhere, and that just doesn't do you any good from a marketing standpoint. Yes, it might help your pocketbook a little bit from a rent standpoint, but what are you giving up from a marketing standpoint is good to consider.
I would say there's also a lot of little tips and tricks that we have with this that we've tested throughout the years that you may not be able to find on the internet and searching, that we can't give away all of our secrets, but there's definitely some ways to beat the system. And but yeah, I mean, that's the benefit of working with us is, we've worked with hundreds and hundreds of companies in this industry, and we have tested random, very obscure strategies that you wouldn't even think of that have worked, and some haven't. And yeah.
Yep, it is a trial and error. Okay, so that rounds out our questions for today. I do want to mention we've talked a lot about data this afternoon. We have a marketing benchmark report launching on Monday, December 15th. That just has, we are very transparent with our data that we collect for our clients in an anonymous way. And we've shared that with the industry for the past 6 years. So we are launching our latest version of the benchmark report on Monday, and also hosting a roundtable to review it. It is a lengthy document. There's tons of insights and data in that report. So we're going to break it all down in this video format on January 20th. So feel free to register, and we look forward to getting your thoughts and opinions on that report. Thank you, RB, Mark, Alex, for all of your insights. It's much appreciated, and we hope you have a good rest of everyone's day.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you all for joining.